Beginning. My name is Dennis Speed, and on behalf of the LaRouche Political Action Committee, I want to welcome everyone here today. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, continues to get away with murder. The Saudi Arabian regime and its British masters also continue to get away with murder. More than that, the central entity getting away with murder is Wall Street, which systematically murders people through the agency of Barack Obama. But all three are the topic of our meeting here today. There's a need to stop the policies and culture of murder, and the only way that that can be done is with a regime change, if you want to put it that way, a removal of Barack Obama from the presidency of the United States. As always, we welcome all questions, all discussion, all comments from you. And so we're going to first of all ask Mr. LaRouche if he has an opening statement for us, and then right after that we go directly to questions. So, Lynn?
Okay, well, we are in an opportune moment where we're ready to produce our own ability to project the kind of conception of organization which is required at this time. This is the moment of readiness where we can move to take over in the process of our own party, our own political organization. And that's, I think, what is important right now. We're now at a point where anything that is opposed to what we represent in terms of our intention is something which we push aside.
Clear to me. All right. So anyone who has a question, the microphone is open. There are a couple of chairs there if you want to line up. So let's take our first person. Okay.
Okay. That's good. Greetings, Mr. LaRouche. My name is Les Jameson. And I'm connected with an organization called HR14.org. A little over a year ago, a survivor of the 9/11 attacks brought this to my attention. This was a gentleman by the name of Rick DeSantis, and he's a survivor of the South Tower attack, a very unique situation. And he had been contacted by Congressman Walter Jones directly about the 28 pages and the legislation and the entire purpose of what Walter Jones was embarking on. So at this point in time, given recent developments with, of course, the refugee crisis and, of course, the Paris attacks, I think it's clearer than ever, and of course, the LaRouche PAC and EIR are very much aware of the need to go after the final declassification of the 28 pages. So I would just like to share a very simple action plan that we're doing. This will actually be quite quick. It's very simple. It's the beauty of it. In order to support some brave politicians who very much want to reveal what's in the 28 pages, it's absolutely essential that we create a groundswell of support nationwide. And we're trying to do this district by district, and we think that we can get 100 to, on average, a couple of hundred people in each district throughout the country, each congressional district, to call their politicians, write the politicians to say, very simply, we want you to read the 28 pages, because they all have access. They just make a request through the intelligence committees. And then we want you to support the passage of the legislation. Now, whether they do or don't, doesn't matter. The main thing is that we are putting it on their radar screen, and we are putting every legislator on notice that there is a large political constituency throughout the country that wants, number one, transparency in government, number two, information for within the 28 pages for the families of the 9/11 victims as well as the general public. And number three, that that information is necessary for any credible notion that we have a national security policy. So, at hr14.org, we have automatic forms where in minutes people can put in their zip code, and a letter automatically goes to their Congress member, and we also have the capability to connect people throughout each congressional district. And we'd like to do it in a timely fashion because it's got to be done. We have a short window. Okay, so again, my name is Les Jameson. The website is hr14.org. I'm in touch with here in Dennis Speed in New York and other leaders, as well as Jeffrey Steinberg and others in Washington, D.C. And with that, if anybody wants to have any participation here in New York, by the way, Kirsten Gillibrand has already agreed to co-sign the Senate bill. We need to thank her. Then we need to get Chuck Schumer on board, and we need to get every other congressman on board, and again, district by district, and also New York City Council, of all city councils in the nation. Don't you think they should be at the forefront of a resolution to release the 28 pages? That's what we can do. So I'm here to help and to galvanize and mobilize. Thank you.
We're silent, though. We're silent again.
I think it's just their volume.
No, they're just done. They're ready for you to.
What?
They're ready for you to respond.
No, I finished my statement. Go ahead.
Okay, well, the point is, I think this is relevant, highly relevant, and there's no question about that. But the problem is that some other things have to be done as well. And that's what I'm concerned about, is that we have often made these kinds of proposals, but we get stymied because along the line, we fail to hit the right button to get this thing working. Now, I'm a quarrelsome person on certain equations and certain occasions as such. And my view is to strike against this problem and to move against it. And I think we have some potential to do that. It's not just by getting people to come along and support. It's by delivering a blow against those forces which will not respond. And you have to, sometimes you don't appeal to people, sometimes you have to kick them in a relevant organ. And that's what we're going to have to do in a line with what you just presented.
I totally agree. And what we're going to do is put up a website called Where They Stand. So anybody who refuses or is silent about this issue, we're going to announce to the public what their position is. So again, it's all about numbers and showing that there is a political constituency, and it's very possible. You know why? Because at this point in time, after 14 years since the attacks of 9/11, millions of people are aware of all the evidence of the fact that 9/11 was a false flag event. Millions of people.
I think we can do it. I think we can do it. You just have to do it the right way and do it firstly directly on one point or 2 points, leading points, and spread it from the 1 or 2 points of which Manhattan is an appropriate location. If you focus on Manhattan in the right way with the right instrumental, you'll get people from other parts of the United States will respond. Because you have to realize that what's happening in Manhattan is the center of the United States. That is the real secret capital still today, since Alexander Hamilton, of the United States. And that's the way to do it. The fist of Alexander Hamilton delivered against the people who didn't pay up to do their dues.
Hi, Lynn. This is Daniel.
Okay, the sound is low. Yeah, maybe stronger. Let's see how it is. How's the,
Hi. Can you hear me now?
yes, good. That's perfect.
Okay, good. All right. I have for you sort of a somewhat of a follow-up, Lynn. This is from a Russian American in New York, and he wanted to make sure that this question was posed to you today.
Okay.
He said, "You're insisting on impeaching Obama. After the terrorism in Paris, do you think it's possible for any branch of the Obama administration to be investigated for any form of sponsorship of terrorism? We all know who created ISIS. We know who trained people that are fighting for ISIS. We know how they got arms, vehicles, etc. But we all play dumb that all of that happened by mistake. But even if a certain part of the administration used color revolutions in Africa or any other location to create terrorist organizations or support them, these actions or inactions have to be investigated. They can call these terrorists some sort of opposition, but we have to judge Obama as smart and intelligent in that he knows what he's doing, and not keep pretending like some sort of delusion, some sort of delusional group."
I think he's a delusional growth himself. The point was, what is Obama? Is Obama really the president of the United States? Or was this a fake that was pulled off in the name of Obama at that time? Well, I will tell you that Obama is not really human. That's true. He's a stooge for the British Queen. That's his role. He was put into power by the British Queen, and she was the person behind the whole thing. He's nothing but a stooge for the British Queen. So if you want to get rid of Obama, you've got to get rid of the forces of the British Empire. And if you go at that, people, look at what's happened in Germany, what is happening now in Germany. Look what was happening in France most recently. Look at what happened in Northern Africa earlier. Look at what the Obama did himself, did merely the work of the Queen. And therefore, if you don't get at the Queen of England and attack the Queen of England, what she represents, you will find that in various parts of the planet, despite the fact that they're frightened, they have lacked the guts to meet this challenge. So we have to take that factor in. You have to have the fist that wins the battle. And appeals are not enough. And if you don't identify Obama as a stooge of the Queen of England, you don't make it. We don't win. So you have to take Obama and say he's nothing but a stooge for the Queen of England. That will open up the campaign as we have to do it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lynn. This is Bruce from New Jersey.
Yes.
About 2 weeks ago, a major newspaper in New Jersey came out with a report saying that 1 out of every 3 families in the state of New Jersey were living below the poverty level. This New Jersey was well known for having one of the highest standards of living, if not the highest standard of living of any state in the country, with the most skilled labor and per capita amount of scientists and engineers. With this past Monday, Dr. Ernie Shapiro and I went down to Trenton, New Jersey, to the state legislature, where they were holding a so-called hearing on legalization of marijuana. Now, the New Jersey senator in charge of that hearing, as noted by other senators who were outraged at the hearing, as he said, wanted to get the hearings off on the right foot, and therefore he was not allowing any opponents of legalization to speak, that there would only be proponents of legalization speaking. One of the things that that was being pushed was that by taxation, by legalizing and taxing marijuana, they would be able to help support education in New Jersey. Now, we all know that this has been a very strong point of Wall Street. You know, we can all remember when leaders of the New York Stock Exchange met with the FARC down in Colombia, who are the supporters and strong arm for cocaine distribution and production in Colombia. We also know that in the recent attacks in Paris, that when the military and the police moved in against one of the groups, that they found that it was drug trafficking which they were involved in. So I just wanted to get your comments on that.
Well, the whole thing comes with the British. We got the echo business. All right. Okay, we're clear. The issue here essentially does go to the British Empire. And you have to go to the British Empire on this thing. You have to realize that the planet is divided into two regions. One is the transatlantic community in general. The transatlantic community is a victim, a submitting victim of the British Empire. And if you don't get at that British Empire problem, you don't win. Because the British Empire is still the controlling element of the transatlantic area. Now what you have is Russia is a factor. We've seen a change in the history of Europe, and implicitly a policy achievement by Russia itself as a part of the same process. So the problem is, it's a question, you've got to go to the right address. You've got to go to the right starting point. And what you have to do is recognize that Obama, like his stepfather, who was a killer by function, Obama is merely a killer. He has no political characteristics except as a killer. So he is not anything you can appeal to. You can throw him out of office, and that's the only thing that will do any good. So trying to appeal to the presidency of the United States at present is a foolish effort, because it won't work. As long as you're appealing to Obama for succor, you are a sucker. And therefore, the succor is actually located in the Queen of England, and that institution, which is the dominant force in the area of both the sides of the Atlantic Ocean. And that's where the problem lies. You go at that, you have to get the right victim in order to kill the right enemy. It's just a mission. Okay.
Down here from Massachusetts. Okay.
Okay. There you are.
Along with Tulsi Gabbard's new bill to end the illegal war against the Assad regime, how do we stop the illegal wars in Syria, Yemen, and many other countries?
Well, that could be done, and I think the Pacific Ocean is one of the areas going into which can be a very important feature of this process. China, you know, is probably the greatest nation on the planet right now, of any single nation. The area associated with China is a powerful institution. Russia, when joined with these forces, is powerful. So the question is, are we going to get rid of that problem? Now the point is now coming from Putin. Putin made a move a period ago, and that action changed the whole course of history up to that point in terms of the entirety of the world. And so therefore we have, with what Putin and China have done in this joint action that they took, has changed the course of history. Now suddenly all those nations which are saying Russia is nothing, Russia is just a bad place, bad people, bad place. Well, what happened? What happened? It came out that was not the case. And we're finding out that China and Russia, and particularly when Russia made the move it made, suddenly now Europe is in awe of Putin and China. So therefore you have to look at the total issue, not local areas, and try to pick out area 1, 2, 3, or 4. That we in the United States, if we make that appeal, that locate the appeal right, don't appeal to Obama. He's rubbish. Get rid of him. But what you have to go at is you have to attack Wall Street. You don't attack Wall Street, you have to shut down Wall Street. That will do it. A drive to shut down Wall Street, absolutely shut down promptly and now. That can do it. Because this is something very similar to what Franklin Roosevelt did in the 1930s. And what Franklin Roosevelt did, he shot down Wall Street. You have to destroy Wall Street if you want to save the United States. And the British are simply an agent of Wall Street. So, if Wall Street's deal is shot down, then the British are shot down too. Why don't we have a nice plan, properly designed for winning a war? Why do we just have an issue? We're going to fight against something. We don't like somebody. We're going to get people to hit them. That's foolishness. You've got to have a strategy. My big strategy on the United States right now is shut down Wall Street. Take everything that Wall Street has as value. Shut it off. Write it off. Get rid of it. There's no right for the existence of Wall Street. Shut it down. Don't pay anything to them. Shut them down. Now take the case of Manhattan. Now Manhattan has a whole territory of things which are occupied by the powers of Wall Street. We have all these skyscrapers in particular which fit into this problem. Now what if we shut down Wall Street? Which is what we have to do. And if we don't shut down Wall Street, we'll be dragging along for a long time. And we can't take that. Pull down Wall Street in the United States. Don't give them a nickel of payment. They stole that money. It's not theirs. It belongs to the people of the United States. Shut that down. If you got the guts to do it, and that's where the fear comes. Because how many people in the United States are living on incomes which depend upon the grants and concessions of Wall Street? If you shut down Wall Street, you just have one declaration, shut down Wall Street now. Where does all that willpower, that financial power of Wall Street lie? Shut it down. Kill it. Don't pay it off. Take the skyscrapers in Manhattan, reorganize them. Clean out the garbage, Wall Street in particular. I think there's a certain general there who's running for president or something of Congress, and he doesn't need any money either. He was given to him. But anyway, what we do is we simply say, take that position that we do not owe a nickel. The people of the United States do not owe a single nickel to Wall Street. Wall Street has to be shut down now. Close it out, because we can then use that fact of closing them out in order to do what Franklin Roosevelt did in the 1930s. And that's the solution. Don't try quick tricks. Concentrate on strategy. And strategy is, if you shut down Wall Street, and Wall Street is totally bankrupt, there's no way that Wall Street could survive. None. You just have to, with like a finger prick, push this thing into bankruptcy. Shut it down. Don't argue about the bankruptcy. Say, you're shut down. You don't exist anymore. That will work. If you want to win, that's the approach you have to take.
Hello. Hi, this is Howard G. This week I've been a lot from Manhattan. I've been doing a lot of work in Manhattan in academia or quackademia as it may be. And we think have a funny branding problem, which is a lot of these British operations seem to be going under the brand of the United Nations. And the first meeting that I went with my Spanish-speaking colleague was called the Mexico Dialogues. And it turned out to be a very strong keynote push for the legalization of marijuana, including government officials and so forth. And even though they got a lot of questioning of them from me and my colleague, they seemed to be oblivious to what we were saying and just pushing. And then they ended that 2016 is going to be the United Nations year of the marijuana, apparently. So this is a push not just in Mexico or New Jersey, but all over the world. So, but this was done on a sort of covert basis because they did not say that this meeting was going to be about marijuana. We thought we were going to talk about immigration or something else. Okay. Second meeting I went to was turned out to be a focus group on sustainable development goals. That apparently there are 17 sustainable development goals that have been declared by the United Nations, both in New York, and that the human rights operation actually is from Geneva, Switzerland. So unfortunately, if they're up in Geneva, I don't know if we're going to be able to touch them out in Geneva. But we're doing what we can in New York. And anyway, this person had the focus group on one hand that countries do want economic development and work for their people and healthcare and so on. And on the other hand, they also want to pursue these climate change goals that we've heard of. And apparently, to get these climate change goals, our United Nations friend, or this woman who happened to be British from a no-good organization, wants something like 3 to 4% of the gross domestic product of all the nations for the fund to redistribute, to sweeten the pot for her global development goals. So, you know, we're being pushed into by the United Nations, or the British Empire rebranded as the United Nations, to adopt these goals. And I'm pretty sure what you would say about this, but I thought it would be interesting to bring it up.
So if anybody comes up and says that that's going to be a policy, United Nations policy of that policy, shut down policy, United Nations. Because they're not united. They're the victims. And being a victim of Wall Street, which is another version of this thing, is something you don't want to accept. You want to bankrupt anybody who's coming up with such a program. And we have to take all these poor suckers, sucking suckers, all for Wall Street and so forth, and all for this program, the so-called United Nations program. It's not a United Nations program. It's a program, the United Nations program is centered in China, not there. China is the center of organization of the planet in terms of the progress of the planet. It happens because China has come up with as a big power, and China and Russia are the center of the successful organization of the planet Earth, because the European organizations otherwise do not function. They're collapsing. The United States is presently collapsing into impotence. South America is a garbage pile, with a few exceptions, and similarly. So therefore, you have to look at the reality that we're dealing with. You have to pick up a faction, an organization which represents the future of mankind. And all this stuff about bailout of this and bailout of that and reforms of this and reforms of that is bunk, is poison. Sink Wall Street. Sink Wall Street now. That will start the chain reaction which eliminates these problems. And we will put in the United States, we in the United States will put all our muscle, if we're wise, into supporting what I just said on behalf of the American people. That will do it.
Hi, Lynn. I got a call about an hour ago from Rick from Bergen County, and his car had broken down in Bergen County. So he was quite unhappy and he couldn't come. Prepared a question. So he's requested that I deliver that question to you.
Okay.
You know Rick from Bergen County.
Yeah.
He's communicated with Tulsi Gabbard, who, as you know, initiated legislation yesterday, bipartisan, to stop the illegal Obama war in Syria against Assad, where he stressed again Obama's obsession with Assad is both counterproductive and disastrous. It undercuts any effective war against Islamic jihadist terror. So he said to her, not only is this counterproductive, but this is a violation of international law as codified at Nuremberg. He pointed out, you had his estimate, 90 million deaths in World War II. The Nuremberg Tribunal was initiated by the Allied powers for the purpose of mobilizing humanity against any subsequent crimes against humanity, war crimes, and so on. So in his communication to the Congresswoman, he emphasized this matter of Nuremberg and international law and conveyed to her, effectively, Congresswoman, you've defended your nation in the military. Will you now defend it by going further, moving for the impeachment of Obama? And his essential question is, for any elaboration from you, is that the appropriate approach, a proper approach vis-a-vis the Congress?
The vulnerable point is Wall Street. Shut down Wall Street, and you bring down every enemy the human species has.
Okay. My name is Ronald Adams. My first time visit, and I'm just assimilating some of the comments that were made. I hear what you say. I agree with most of the topics that you're bringing up, but I don't know if the substantive issues that underline has ever been identified other than making it sound like a cheerleading opposition and destroying something and not having a clue on how you're going to replace it. I, one, understand very much how the financing of the war that is going on in the Middle East, I spent 15 years there, and I know the largest weapon sales in the history of the world of 62 billion plus that occurred about 5-6 years ago made to Saudi Arabia, how they became proliferated in regards to people who picked them up to create terrorist group, ISIL, etc., etc. We have a large population in this world, 7.5 billion plus. What are you going to do if you cut off Wall Street? I'll stop there
If we cut off Wall Street, this problem will be, the curse will be removed. And what I will do, and other people like me will do, will complete the success. We don't have to worry about this thing or that thing. If we sink Wall Street, which means sinking the British Empire, and that will happen automatically because the British Empire depends upon its control over the Constitution of the United States.
I'd just like to hear the methodology.
Yeah.
Okay? I'll wait for it.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Lyndon LaRouche. I want to say LaRouche because that's the way I was brought up, Mr. LaRouche. My name is Johanna. I'm from Manhattan, and I wanted to know what relationship there is, if any, with Pollard's release recently and the comment that Netanyahu made that he's been making great efforts for his release and how that affects the situation, if any.
Look, we know the history of Israel. We know I was closely involved with the leadership of Israel in the immediate post-war period, with the government of Israel at that point. At a certain point, under British influence over Israel, Israel was essentially either leading people in Israel who were the leaders were either killed, in some cases, assassinated, the true leaders of Israel, and other elements came in under British influence. And the Israeli operate policy in the United States and Britain was the corruption source of this whole problem. Without that corruption source, this could not have happened. What happened to Israel? But you have now you have a figure in Israel who is a continuation of the same old British system that we fought in the early period of the post-World War II. And that's what you have to look at. You're looking at the British connection, because what's controlled in Israel now from the top down is the British aspect of this thing. If you look down underneath there, what had happened in the history of Israel, you'll find the greatest leaders of Israel, within Israel, who tended to be assassinated because they were opponents of the British faction, which is trying to control Israel still today.
This up. Let me just point out, as Alvin's going to the microphone, this happens to be, this month is the 20th anniversary of the assassination of Rabin, who of course had bucked the British and was working with Clinton precisely against their interests. So I just wanted to reference that. Go ahead.
Hi, Lynn. Alvin here in New York. There seems to be a chorus that is growing both internationally and domestically, and nothing seems to be going right for Obama these days. His audience seems to be dwindling. I think the 4 servicemen, that letter that the former drone operators or who were involved in that program was very powerful and very useful in that regard. But what I wanted to talk with you about and just reference briefly is Jacques Cheminad's recent letter on overcoming fear, because Obama's still there. He becomes more dangerous every day. Paris did happen, it can happen again, and it will happen again. And we need, as organizers, to, from a personal standpoint, and I think overall, address what that gripping fear can be. I just want to read a brief section of what Jacques says we need to do and let you elaborate from there. Our reaction must be equal to the challenge. We should fear nothing but fear itself, as fear inspires mad reactions that add to the initial madness. Coping with fear cannot be done in a state of passivity or denial, but by facing the situation as it is in the name of truth. Only the fight for truth allows us to escape the vice of anxiety. And this is what I would like for you to talk about so that we can avoid that here, because we need to move people right now on the 28 pages, not frighten them.
Well, Jacques, we bounce. Okay, we bounce these echoes. That's embarrassing. Now, there's a different view. I don't agree with Jacques' estimate of this thing. I think I agree with his intention, but I don't agree with his endpoint, because I know what the whole history is, and Jacques does know from me what the whole history is. I was at that point before Jacques got into this business. I was dealing with forces in Britain, and I had mobilized support for my policy from the leading industrial powers inside the British Empire then, or the British economy then. What happened is we had a young lady, so to speak, who was on the other side, and she became the instrument to actually attack me. And so therefore the entire effort of the project, which I had led inside the British economy, among the industries in British. And what happened immediately after that, in that course, that France became corrupted parentally since, the new presidency. In other words, the socialist presidency in France, together with the British, have destroyed the economy and the morality of France. Now, what happened was recently, yes, they reacted strongly because of the terrorist attack on France. Without the attack on France, they would have never had the guts to do what they did on the basis of what happened in France, the killing of people in France by terrorists. If the terrorists had not been loosed in France for successful killing, the French government would have given no support whatsoever to what it did when it reacted against the effect of the mass killing in France. So you have to understand that a lot of people have wishful thinking, including my friend Jacques sometimes has that problem. But you have to understand what you're up against. You cannot pick on local areas and assume that a local area is going to be the mother of a successful organization on a broader national or multinational station. It doesn't work that way. It never did. I've lived through most of this stuff since the time I got out of military service. And I've been involved pretty much in that period all the way to the present time. And people tend to fall into mistaken views, the assumptions that you can just overlook a detail which is actually standing in the way of preventing any solution of the type you desire. I mean, it's not enough to have good intentions. It's also necessary to have the insight and skill to know how systems work. And that's my specialty.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
You have often said Obama learned how to destroy any opposition to him from his stepfather, who you call out as a killer as well. Could you name him? Who is this person that taught Obama how to be a killer?
His stepfather. His stepfather, who was married to his mother.
What's the name? Who is he?
Yeah, the whole thing, the whole operation was done by a woman who had sexual relations with other kinds of gentlemen at a certain point, and got a funny career. And she gave birth to by marriage to what the greatest killer in South Africa, or not South Africa, but South Asia. And his father was a mass killer. Obama is a mass killer. That's the, I mean, when it comes down to that, Obama's father was a mass killer in Asia. The mother of Obama was the wife of this mass killer. Obama himself is the son of that mass killer.
Okay, I just wanted to know.
What? Yeah, that's it.
Oh. Oh, well, what did he do in Indonesia? Was he?
He was a colonel in the military officer of a tyranny in Asia, and he had the practice of mass killing of people to eliminate entire parts of the population of that nation. And Obama has the same personal characteristic as his mass murderer's father. That's what our problem is. If you come out and say that this guy is what he is, that he's a child of his father, who's a mass murderer and has the same characteristics of his father, and you look at the number of Americans who have been murdered on Tuesday, opposite Tuesday, in the United States, and you would say, you have no sympathy whatsoever for Obama and his wife, his mother, and himself, his father. These were evil people. They should not have existed. In an orderly society, they would not have existed. Because they were mass murderers.
Indonesia, in the state of Indonesia. He was an American military.
He was from Indonesia. It's what we're talking about. Okay, when you lived in Indonesia.
Okay, I'm back. Earlier I asked a question on behalf of another person, but I want to give you, Lynn, a couple of short reports that I think raise a question. So on Monday of this past week, there was an event at a think tank in New York called the Asia Society. And present at this was the new president of the Asia Society. This is a think tank that's about 50 years old. It goes back to Rockefeller and to the Rockefellers. And but the guy who's taken over is the former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, who is one of the leading climate change lunatics on behalf of the British Empire. But what he did at that event was sort of demonstrates, sort of fills out what's going on in New York City right now from the British Queen. Because he brought in a woman who was the chief negotiator for Obama on the TPP. And he announced that she was going to, he just stepped in to lead the organization, she's going to step in to lead the organization in Washington, D.C. So this is an Obama imperial representative. And the two of them stood up there, and they told lies about China to a crowd of people. Many of them were Asians in the room. And they, a couple of our activists, myself included, we stood up and we raised the truth, and these two people did, did everything they could to prevent any discussion thereof. But it's clearly the British Queen's hand in trying to create an institution in New York City to dominate the discussion about China using this existing organization. Now, I had another experience later in the week when myself and another representative, we went to of the LaRouche organization, we went to a campaign event, a presidential campaign event, and while we were there, there was a discussion, a loud public discussion about the war in Syria and Hillary Clinton's program of a no-fly zone.
Good.
And a person listening to this with a British accent came over and started to interrupt and say, no, 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 the no-fly zone is necessary because, in fact, there's huge civilian murders being perpetrated by the Russians. And he claimed this, that the Russians are killing 95% civilians with their attacks in Syria. So when probed, it turned out that this person admitted that he was a employee of the British government and that he had been active as part of the British action in Afghanistan with the so-called Northern Alliance. So, and this person was at a relatively small campaign event, very publicly attempting to shape the discussion as being anti-Russia. So I sort of want to present you with these two reports on the British Crown's activity in New York City and ask you what can we do to escalate against the Queen right now?
All you have to do is spread the information cumulatively in this matter, and you make a laughing stock of the British. The only way to deal with this is make them a laughing stock. Oh, you're dumb limey again. Some dumb lying limey again.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, great. This is Jessica from
Yes.
Hi. Okay. I recently went to a union meeting. I'm a delegate to the United Federation of Teachers union. And again, we have all of these issue-oriented, hoopla on what's going on at the time. This issue and that issue and another issue. Now, these issues are what has been discussed. The number of homeless people is growing. It is 30% higher now than what it was 3 years ago. This was, I guess, after Obama was reelected, it got worse. $15 salary increase. Everybody needs to make, or at least the fast food workers especially, are rallying around the $15 increase that they need in salary. People without health insurance are going to be fined as of the 2016 tax year. If you don't have adequate, whatever that is, under the Obamacare, you're going to be fined for not having enough or the right kind of health insurance. And this is on top of the fact that the health insurance that people are being given, or so-called given, is totally ridiculous. They're either paying very high premiums or they're paying these, not even the co-pays are that bad. It's also where you have to pay so much before you can even get seen by a doctor or have your surgery done. Legalizing marijuana in order to pay for schools and roads and, the good stuff. So you put in place something that's totally demonic in order to pay for the good things like schools and roads and bridges and all of that. Okay, so I listen to these issue-oriented things and I'm like really getting tense over it because as we know, the only thing that's going to cure these evils is to pass Glass-Steagall. So when you stand up and there's 600 people in the room and you say, all of these things will be cured when we pass Glass-Steagall, you get people telling you, it's interesting. But of course, that doesn't bother me. Okay. The thing is, there was a question just recently, what happens after we pass Glass-Steagall? I'd like you to comment, first of all, on how all of these things are tied to Glass-Steagall. The evils of the world, as you just said, are obliterated when Glass-Steagall is put in place. And then, as in the Franklin Roosevelt administration, when the CCC was created, the training and things that are going to be needed to be put in place, especially for our youth, to bring our country back into order even after Glass-Steagall is passed.
Okay, the problem began when President Roosevelt lost the election for the party. At that point, from that point until the death of Franklin Roosevelt, which is that interval, which I'm well informed about as how this thing worked. As a matter of fact, there was a friend of mine, who I had later a friend of mine, who was walking down the corridor with a leading associate of the President of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt. He walked out of there, and that experience led me into a position of leadership under the administration of a president. And so therefore, I'm fully aware of all this racket. And I know that when the president was bounced around and killed, or they tried to kill him, and I was serving this president, and they tried to kill this president that I was serving as a special agent for the United States. And that's what I know about this whole business. Now you get to the educational process. Now, what is the intent? What has been the intention of the conditions of operation of members of the United States after President Roosevelt lost the election, the re-election, his famous case? What happened then? There was a systemic process of destruction and degrading of the people employed under the new administration. Now, you had a few presidents who resisted this problem, but the trend has been, and we have a airport right nearby called Dulles, and Dulles means dull for the people. Dullification of the people. And so since that point, there's been a continuing degeneration. Now, the degeneration began actually with Bertrand Russell at the beginning of the 20th century. Franklin Roosevelt's intervention was an intervention. When he lost his re-election, the final re-election, when he lost that re-election, the United States went toward hell. It was slimy and sloppy and evil. The United States has never regained what it lost. And Ronald Reagan, who I was in direct service to, principal service to, was also crippled because he was the assassination by a Bush family member. He was still in prison for a long time because of his attempt to murder the president. But after the point of that, after Ronald Reagan was out of the office, you had no strength in the United States for the defense of the people and the education system in the United States. The degeneration went at that point. And I would date the Reagan administration, during the time I served under it, was the high point reached so far. And since that time, the United States has been rotting out. And you would find that people today are much more stupid than they were when I was being born.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lynn. How are you today?
Well, not too bad for an old geezer of my age.
That's good to hear. All right. My question is, how is it that we can get people to more readily assimilate the severity of our situation? Last night I was out to dinner with a friend, and we were talking about the 28 pages. We were talking about the imminent collapse, and everything that hit his ears was, yes, I understand, but somehow I'll just make it. You know, he's like, well, I live subsistently as it is. You know, like when this collapse hits, it's not going to really affect me. It's going to affect the other people.
Yeah.
So I want to know, how can we get across to people more easily, or how is it that we can get to these people's heads and of this is going to affect you and this is going to be very serious?
I think you ought to have some fun. Now, I have fun on this thing. I think you should share that fun. I would say, okay, what Wall Street is going to be closed down one way or the other. Now, the nice would be to close down Wall Street in the immediate future, the immediate terms ahead. We throw Obama out of the office at the same time. Now, that would actually change the atmosphere in a qualified way, because what's happened, as you know, during the course of the 20th century, and now the present successor to the presidency, to the term, that the quality of everything in the life of the United States, of the members of the United States, in general, has become degenerated, consistently degenerated over the long span. Things are getting worse. People are becoming more stupid, more vicious, more idiotic than they ever were before in the United States. And the only way we're going to solve that problem is to do something to reverse that tendency. Now, if you take the consideration of the young people in our United States now, let's take the case of California. Let's take the case of the high school and similar kinds of schools in California. What is the quality of that education relative to what had happened in the 20th century? That is, the 20th century standard at the close was something greater than has been sustained over the entire period from the beginning of the 20th century to the present time. People are stupid, they're corrupted, they're diseased, they're miseducated. Therefore, what you have to do is you have to reverse that. And you have to actually have a program of employment and education which reverses the trend. And you have to cancel everything that's Wall Street and everything that smells like Wall Street or looks like it or crawls like it. And we have to actually say, look, the United States and its people have degenerated. The characteristic of our citizens, they have degenerated. And there are very few exceptions in the whole mass. So therefore, what can you do? You're not going to regenerate people who have been degenerated unless you take some special operation. Now, if we do that, we're going to have to create a program of employment. We're going to have to close down Wall Street. Wall Street must shut its gate forever and never appear again. But that is only the beginning point. We have to then freeze everything and give no pension, no support to anything that maintains the same kind of policy which has been the trend in the United States since the beginning of the 20th century. So therefore, what we're going to have to do is create a program of progress which stimulates a population to gradually replace the work of the incompetents who dominate work intelligence, that is education, and skills today. We're going to have to recast the presently active population and the present student populations, because they're not going to be able to make it unless we recruit them to give up the ways they're living now.
Thank you.
Hi, Lynn. How you doing? Yeah.
I'm alive. That's gratitude enough.
All right. So we've been tuning into this whole music organization in New York, Manhattan. We've been doing a whole series of different. We've been going to the Met and actually going to different parts of the city, and we're now finding a lot of people that either have went to the Bergonzi demonstration back in 1993. We met one other lady who was a conductor and a composer who has said, you know, I am totally with you on this Verdi tuning question. We've got to fight for this. And I briefed her on our 1,500-person choral fight that we're waging to actually create a real choral process around this. Now, I know you've been discussing a lot on placement and the necessity for that. And I just want you to elaborate more on that and what we can do to really solidify and codify this whole, as we're scratching the surface on this, we're getting a real passionate response around this. So I wanted to see what you have to say.
What happened on Thursday, during Thursday this past week, past week, we have actually introduced implicitly, not all people may agree with this right now, but what we're going to do, insofar as it will be successful, will mean that we will reverse a lot of the trends in musical education and practice. We will take Furtwängler as the German model of how a singing voice should work. We have, on the other hand, the Italian school of the greatest Italians who are well known to us also, and many of them are still alive, who are the practitioners of this particular school. The difference is a language difference. That is, the use of the German language as opposed to the Italian language is, of course, a significant difference. But the difference on principle, on the fundamental principle, between the Italian school, as I have experienced it, and what the German school of Furtwängler represents, are essentially morally complementary. That is, I mean, the way the whole system of the Furtwängler approach gives you a certain limitation, which is a successful limitation, which can be applied. On the Italian side, you have an Italian school which has the same quality of approach. Both share the common idea of the placement of a human singing voice. And that's what the issue is. The placement of the human singing voice, as compared to what Furtwängler accomplished in his lifetime and what was being accomplished by the Italian school, and still is being pushed by the Italian school in Manhattan area. And that thing is still alive. It's not well developed. It's not in the best aging process, but it's still there. So we have right now, you go to Brooklyn, and you go to the right location in Brooklyn, and you can find people in the Italian school abundantly, relatively speaking. And you should go out there and organize that population of the Italian school immediately, and you must also get in there and make sure that Furtwängler's role and achievements are also placed, because it's only when you combine the placement system of Furtwängler and Italian school do you get a really good school of musicality now.
All right, thank you.
No?
Aha, young man friend.
Yeah, right. I think we're more or less sort of at the end, but I did have a question for you, Lynn, on what you just said. Because I think one of the things that's come up here today is a very interesting issue of composition, because you've emphasized Alexander Hamilton from the beginning, and that being the template that we take as a whole, and all these various issues, but specifically the Wall Street issue. But what I was thinking about when you said what you just said is, when you take the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, you have the three first movements, and then you have the fourth movement in which he says, or he declares both musically and then in words, "Oh friends, not these tones. Oh Freunde, nicht diese Töne." So what happens is that although there has been clear development, obviously before, now there's a completely different compositional principle that he introduces, or at least there's an evolvement, an advancement of it. What I hear, what I think is going on, and what goes on in these meetings all the time, is that people are bringing up various things, many of which are very important. The problem is the composition. The question is, how do you compose the battle so that you actually win? I remember that Claudio Arrau once said about Beethoven's compositions, he said, there is this struggle, and it is intense, but somehow he wins. And he says the performer has to convey that. He has to get out of the way of the composition when he is attempting to reproduce it, so that that idea, in some fashion, which is the idea of the composer, comes across. So all I wanted to ask you was this. I think we're pretty much at the end, unless somebody else has a question. I hadn't seen any others. But as we enter this new phase, you've said what you said about the issue of Obama and Wall Street. How do we get this idea of composition, which you were beginning to talk about there just a minute ago? How do we get this, how do we make this as efficient as we can?
Now, the problem here is when you ask this question, you run into a real problem, because people think they understand something and they don't. Right? Now, the question is the concept of the placement of the human singing voice. Now, in both cases, in the case of Furtwängler, who is a perfected person in this respect, and what the Italian school did, of the great Italian school, which they're still agents of that school living, I think, believe in Manhattan or around Manhattan. So the idea of placement, which is something the average citizen who thinks he's a musician has never really understood. But only a few people still understand what this idea of placement means. It does not mean projecting a tone as such. It means something else. But anyone who is actually qualified to understand this, for all people present, it is the question of the principle of placement, not the sound of the voice as such, but the placement of the voice. That is the issue. Is the issue in the case of Furtwängler, is the issue in the Italian school the same way. The difference is the language. The German language and the Italian spoken language are not the same thing. They're not the same materials. They're the same principle, but they aren't made of the same, woven as the same material. And that's the only difference. Furtwängler is perfected in terms of German. He's actually, there's an expression of what came before him, from Beethoven and so forth. Same thing. So the Beethoven tradition is that of Furtwängler. You get to the Italian school, you get the same kind of problem. The point is the musical voice is different, but it has the same quality of function. And therefore the Italian can sing merrily in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of places. The German will be much more confined, less free. And that's the difference. The Germans can do a very good job. Furtwängler did an excellent job. The Italians tend to be more free in their expression, but it's still great stuff.
Okay, so if you would like to give us a summary statement, Lynn, and then a closing statement, unless that's it.
I think that maybe that will close it out nicely.
On that note, okay.
Anyway.